My name is Rob Taylor, and the thing on my mind these days is my wife Helen's mental health. Having both our children leave home almost simultaneously, the closure of the Housing Council Support Service, and Helen being made redundant from her job hit her hard. She had never been very confident, and these changes made her anxiety worse, despite all the support I tried to give her. Everyone liked Helen. She was quiet and introverted, but had a wonderful personality and was always ready to help. I was truly blessed to have her in my life. I thought she was gorgeous, although most people probably thought she was just pretty, like a regular girl next door. She had long brown hair that she wore in a simple ponytail and wore little to no makeup. She was shy and always wore closed clothes, preferring jeans and baggy tops. Only I was able to see what was hidden under this inconspicuous appearance. She had a magnificent body. Despite my persuasion, she was very conservative in bed and never allowed herself to completely relax. We decided that a new job might help take her mind off the fact that her children had left her parents' home. I was talking to my longtime friend Steve Turner over a beer, and he surprisingly offered the job right away. He had a secretary position opening up at his facilities management company, and he knew Helen well and thought her previous experience might be helpful. So Helen became the new secretary at Turner's facilities. Helen was initially worried about whether she would be able to handle the responsibilities, especially greeting clients, as she was more comfortable in the back office or answering phones. Despite her misgivings, Steve was delighted with her work and explained to me at our regular beer night that she was doing a great job and everyone adored her. Steve continued, "She's amazing, got me organized in a matter of days, and now I can get so much more done. If she was a little more confident and outgoing with clients, she would be perfect." Yes, she was always shy. She had a hard time at school. It took me a long time to convince her to start dating me when we first met. I always tried to calm her down and support her. She doesn't realize how naturally people like her. Her children gave her purpose and direction in life, and now that they are grown, she is even more insecure. Maybe we can work together to help her develop self-confidence. How do we do this? I will join in with your positive reinforcement and give her a lot of support and encouragement. I will let her try something new at work, something that I know she will excel at. You know how it happens. A wife does not always believe her husband, but she pays attention to what other men say, but you and I get along. If she has a positive experience at work, it will affect other aspects of her life. Yes, maybe this will help. Thank you, Steve. It didn't take long before Helen started telling me about good days at work and getting great feedback from Steve and others. I was happy that things finally seemed to be looking up. I tried to praise Helen a lot and emphasize how well she was doing. Steve gave her a day off to rest for her good work, which included a visit to the spa for facials, nails, and hair treatments. Helen tried to refuse, but Steve insisted. When she got home, I told her she looked amazing, and she blushed and sheepishly responded with a quick "thank you." "I'm serious, Helen. Your hair looks great when it's down and your makeup and nails suit you very well. It's nice to see how you open up. The new job is good for you." "Thanks, Rob. I'm starting to feel more positive and better." These words must have struck a chord with her because we had a very pleasant night. Steve told me that the next day when she came to work, he said something similar to her, emphasizing that this look was ideal for the office. Then he offered her a more active role in client work, which included expenses and a clothing allowance. Helen. Steve handed me a card with the name of the boutique and told me that I could have any work clothes I wanted for my new role. He waved me off. "Ask Justine, she's the owner and offers personal shopper services. This is all at the expense of the company, so don't worry about expenses." The boutique didn't have my usual clothes, pantsuits or baggy tops. Justine encouraged me to try on pencil skirts and satin tops, telling me I had a great figure and should show off my legs. I wasn't sure about it at all. I'd always covered up since school, but I didn't want to disappoint Steve, who had been so supportive of my work, and Justine said the clothes reflected the right, high-class, professional image. They were, of course, quite expensive. I felt the quality of the material, cut and stitching. I decided to take just one outfit, a simple black knee-length skirt and a white cotton blouse. I needed nylons and chose 3-inch strappy heels to go with them. It was a small portion of the benefit, and I declined Justine's offer to try more. For the first time, I had to tuck in my top, but it looked out of place hanging over a rather tight skirt. Looking in the mirror, I quietly admitted that my figure looked normal, at least for a woman in her 40s who had given birth twice. The next day, I somewhat nervously wore them to work. Rob actually whistled when he saw them at breakfast. "Wow, what an honor we have. You hardly ever get your legs out. Not that I'm complaining." "Ha, thanks, but you like me and everything that shows me off." "Really, you have great legs, and for some reason you hide them. You look amazing." "It's just office wear. Steve gave me some pocket money and asked me to try out personal shopping. They offered a more professional approach to working with clients." "Happy customers, the buyer knows what he's doing. You look very professional and quite sexy." When I got to work, still consciously checking myself, Steve's reaction surprised me. "Wow, what a transformation. This look is perfect. It's exactly the look I was hoping for. You look professional, and it shows competence." I felt blush, but I had to admit that it felt good. The fact that a handsome man a little younger than me was complimenting my appearance was something I could never remember. I scored well in the toilet, had a decent figure, and seemed to go in and out in the right places. It brought back terrible memories from school. I was never pretty and was a very late developer. Girls at that age can be so cruel, much more so in fact than boys. When I did develop, it happened quickly, and I developed a habit of hiding my assets in loose clothing. I went back to Justine's and bought more skirts and blouses and found that I felt good in them, much better than I expected, and Rob and Steve seemed to like them. As I was leaving the store, I noticed a guy looking at me and wondering what happened. It took me a while to realize that he was testing me. This was something new. I could never remember this happening. I wasn't sure how I felt about this, a little worried but flattered at the same time. Work was busy, and we usually worked immediately after grabbing a sandwich at the table. After a particularly stressful day dealing with a customer complaint, Steve suggested it was unhealthy and we needed a decent break. Despite my growing workload, he insisted that we go to a local cafe for lunch. It became a regular thing. It was mostly a work lunch, but we got to know each other better. I really liked Steve. He was the only guy I ever knew well besides Rob. Rob, I was talking to Steve again over a couple of beers, discussing Helen's improvement since she returned to work, which I was extremely grateful for when he caught me off guard. "I would like your permission to seduce Helen." I almost choked on my beer. What the hell? Steve just laughed. "Just listen to me. I like her. I really like her. I think she's the nicest person I've ever met, and I think I can help her a little more." "Oh, and what do you think of that?" "Well, her confidence is still very low. She seems insecure and puts everything on others. I could flirt with her, make her feel really good, provide even more positive reinforcement. No chance. Flirting and seduction is too far, and that's my job as her husband." And yet years later, she is still meek and meek. She knows you love her. She thinks everything you say is because of that, not because it is true. Fair or not, she accepts my comments as true because we're not in love or anything. That's how we can work together to bring her out of her shell. I don't mean sex or anything inappropriate, just flirting and hanging out together. She's great company. Why would I agree to this? I'm not getting anything, and I could very well jeopardize my marriage. Really, you want to tell me that you didn't notice the difference? Isn't she happier and more confident? I see this at work. You must have seen it at home. Maybe, I muttered to myself. I knew it was true. Helen seemed more alive and content, and our sex life had improved significantly. Steve continued, "You've already won, and it's just by giving her a little time and attention. What's the harm in that? It could be good for both of you." I thought Steve took it as an attempt to do us a favor and help, but I came to my senses. No, absolutely not. This is dangerous and could tear us apart. I know she likes you already, and she always sees the best in people. Okay, it was just an idea. I'm not a threat. She's clearly in love with you. We didn't talk about it anymore, and everything went back to normal. I knew that Helen and Steve often dined together and made no attempt to hide it. She seemed to be doing a great job in her role and had settled into her daily routine. A few months later, I surprised Steve over a beer. I was thinking about what you were talking about a few months ago, about flirting with Helen. I'm so sorry, Rob. I got carried away because I think so highly of her. I definitely didn't want to cause any problems for you or us, and I completely backed down and kept everything professional. Yes, I understand that, but it seems to me that she is withdrawing into herself again. Look, you have my permission to flirt with her and see how things go. If she likes it and it's appropriate, well, just follow your feelings. Steve looked puzzled. Okay, but why did you change your mind, Rob? I have my reasons, and I really want the best for her. I can't say anything more now. Maybe it's just curiosity to see how she reacts. Helen, I really enjoyed my job, and in many ways, I thought it helped me come out of a pretty dark place. Steve was easy to work with. It was like working with your best friend. Steve has been flirting more lately. He was a few years younger than us and very attractive, so I didn't take it too seriously. It was just his way. He would often come over to our house and have dinner with me and Rob. He was a pleasant conversationalist, and we all got along very well. I usually walked Steve to the door and said goodbye with a kiss on the cheek. We seemed to be getting closer, and we were spending a lot of time together. He made me laugh, just like Rob used to do. I was leaning over the meeting table when Steve suddenly blurted out, "You know, you look amazing lately." I was dumbfounded and took a long time to gather my thoughts to answer. "Thanks, I do my hair and makeup now. It makes a big difference." "Yes, that's part of it, but you've also changed. You've become more comfortable in your body." "You may be right, I do feel different, and this job has done a lot for that, all thanks to you. I have no idea why you trusted me, but thank you. It means a lot to me." A few days later, it was another hectic morning. Steve was leaning over my desk and didn't seem to be paying attention to the Excel spreadsheet we were discussing. I looked down and saw that one of the buttons of my blouse was undone, giving Steve a great view of my cleavage and bra. We both fell silent. I looked up and met his gaze, which was glued to my cleavage. He looked fascinated before our eyes met. I should have been angry and was about to snap out of my stupor when Steve smiled, and it was quite disarming. "Sorry for looking, but you're so beautiful." His comment and smile confused me. Instead of anger, I laughed and closed my open neckline. "That's enough for you, pervert. I didn't mean to expose myself. It won't happen again." "Please don't say that. You can leave a couple of buttons undone whenever you want. It will make my day. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "Well, enough of that. It's just a bra, and it reveals less than you'd see by the pool." "Believe me, this is something more. You and your breasts are beautiful. I saw them shimmering over the red lace, but the most mesmerizing thing was the slight swaying when you moved. It was so indescribably seductive." I was so stunned that I felt my face turn red. No one had ever been so direct and open with me before, at least not about my appearance, and I didn't know how to respond. I came to my senses and recovered a little. "Well, I'm glad it made you happy, and now we have a job, don't we?" This moment left me confused. Flirting was something completely new to me, but I have to admit that I enjoyed it and had butterflies in my stomach. I'd never flirted with anyone before, even before I met Rob, and no guy had ever been this interested in me. Rob felt it that same night. I always thought sex was normal, more an expression of love than anything else. I had never felt vampy or desired, but now I realized I could tease and flirt with Rob. I saw his desire and played with him, teased him until the sexual tension built and our reunion became almost desperate. A few days later, Rob surprised me with a gift, stockings. "Why did you buy these for me?" "Well, you've been wearing skirts all the time lately, and with summer coming, I thought you'd be more comfortable in them. Come on, come up with something better." He laughed out loud. "You understand me. The truth is that I like your legs, and I like the thought of you wearing stockings. It turns me on." "Well, I might think about it, but no promises, and you won't know if I'm wearing them or not. You deserve to suffer for trying to take advantage of me." The next day, I decided to put them on, and I have to admit they felt nice. As soon as I walked into the office, Steve caught me. "You look great today." "Thank you." "No, seriously, I mean it. Something has changed in you." I felt nervous. I checked several times that the suspenders and clasps were not visible and put on a lined skirt to cover them. Steve's words brought me back from my mental checks. "I don't know what it is, but you radiate confidence. It just oozes out of you. Do you mind if I take a couple photos of you? We could use them in marketing and company profiles. And well, I want to capture you exactly as you are now." I think yes. I stood in front of my desk and Steve took a couple of pictures with his phone. "Yeah, these look great. Let's do some portraits and some full body shots. Sit down. Let's try a few different positions." I hesitated for a moment before sitting down. "Great. Cross your legs at the ankles." "Perfect." "And maybe a pair with fully crossed legs." "You're just perfect. Thanks for the photos. I'll edit them for the profiles." I thought it was all a little strange and wondered why Steve needed so many photographs. Perhaps he wanted them for personal purposes. As I thought about it, I realized that it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me at all, really. I have to admit that I felt good in the stockings. Maybe Steve was right. They did give me confidence. Rob. That day, I received a short video from Steve with a short accompanying message. "Thanks for the tip about stockings. See appendix." Enclosed was a standard office photo of Helen, but the second appendix included a 3-second video clip of Helen sitting and crossing her legs, giving a glimpse of the stockings I bought her. I could tell from her movements that she probably didn't realize that she had flashed the top of her stockings. I was both jealous and excited. Whatever my feelings, I couldn't wait for her to come home. The sex that night was amazing. Helen was more passionate than ever. We forgot about dinner and almost attacked each other as soon as she came home from work. I pulled her skirt up and discovered that she was actually wearing stockings. "God, you look so damn sexy." "I'm glad you like it, which is good because I need you horny right now." Any worries about what was going on between Steve and Helen were quickly forgotten, and after finding an empty stocking wrap in the bin, writing to Steve turned out to be a great idea. Stockings became a common item of Helen's clothing. Steve said the boutique sent him a shopping list every month, which included several pairs of stockings and garter sets from the Secrets in Satin collection. Catching Helen putting them on was always a pleasure. I thought that Helen had become a completely different person, especially when it came to sex. The once shy and modest housewife had turned into a real cat, much more aware of her sexuality and the impact it could have on me. "Helen." I found myself sitting in front of Steve's desk and automatically crossed my legs, noticing how his gaze quickly slid downwards before he smiled at me. "Thank you." I looked at him in surprise. "For what?" "For wearing stockings." "I'm not sure I know what you mean." "It surprises me because you show them off so often, sometimes I even see the clasps." "Ah, caught, I think." "Yeah, the thought of you wearing them really turns me on, and those little glimpses are just gorgeous." To my irritation, I blushed again. "I never show them on purpose. It seems to me that it's all in your perverted imagination." With these words, I slowly crossed my legs again and noticed how his eyes lingered on them. After that, I realized that everything was starting to get out of control. I needed to tone down the flirting or risk losing what I had with Rob. Nothing serious had happened yet, but what I was doing was inappropriate for a married woman. Rob and I attended the Small Business Awards at Steve's request as he was a nominee and had some free tickets. I felt a little uncomfortable, but excited to be with two men who I knew cared about me. To be honest, part of me found it fascinating. Steve won the award and everyone, including me, swarmed around congratulating him. Rob wasn't feeling well and said he would go home and told me to stay and enjoy the evening. We all had a great time interacting with our colleagues. It was really fun. I spent most of the time dancing and talking with Steve and felt like I was getting even closer to him. He mentioned an upcoming work trip, the following week a couple of days at an industry trade show to showcase the company's products and perhaps attract new clients, which I agreed to go on. I kissed him goodbye, and this time the kiss was on the lips and perhaps lasted a little longer than it should have. I came home late and pretty groggy. Rob was already asleep, and he still didn't look well the next morning. I made him breakfast, despite my headache from yesterday, and casually mentioned my upcoming work trip. He caught me off guard with his reaction. Is this a work trip or something else? You seem very taken with him and feel quite comfortable. That was evident last night. This is a business trip, Rob. He is my friend, more than just a boss. I admit he's handsome, but he's a really good person. What are you trying to say? I don't even know, Rob. I guess I'm afraid something else might happen. Well, at least you're honest. Do you want something to happen? I have no idea and haven't thought about it. You know that I was a virgin when we got together, and I never had a boyfriend before you. I'm not used to someone showing such interest in me. Spending time with Steve is nice, it's flattering, and I enjoy his company. He's helped me a lot. Looks like you're falling in love with him, Helen. My mind was in turmoil had I just admitted to my husband that I was thinking about cheating. His reaction was strangely restrained. I tried to remember his words and began to wonder if he was actually okay with what was going on between me and Steve. It seemed strange and not the reaction I would have expected from Rob. No, it's not like that. The attention is nice, but I wouldn't want to go further. I'm afraid of disappointing you. You keep me on a pedestal that I don't deserve, but I definitely don't want to fall off it. I won't go if you don't want me to. We didn't discuss it further, and Rob didn't object or say anything. We didn't really talk about it again before I left for my trip on Wednesday. I called him every evening and told him how my day went. Our conversations were awkward and confused. When I returned home on Friday, I was confused. Rob just looked at me, and it was hard for me to meet his gaze. The silence dragged on until he finally said a short phrase that I will never forget. So it's not just platonic, huh? Oh my God, you know. I guessed it. You can barely look at me. I'm sorry, it all happened by itself, and you didn't mind when I left. Steve told me how it all started, and said that he knew that he asked you to do this. Not really, he said he wanted to flirt. I didn't know he or you would take it any further. Was this what you expected? It wasn't planned, Rob, it just happened. Please don't ask me about it. I feel terrible about what happened and about you. Do you love him? We became close. I think we developed feelings for each other, but I love you more than anything. To be honest, he helped me realize that something was missing. His confidence is contagious. It transfers and helps me feel better. Sex seemed like a natural extension of our friendship. This comment threw him off balance. There was no outburst, no big argument. Rob just looked more tired than anything. I just couldn't understand his reaction. I half expected to be thrown out into the street and couldn't have objected one bit. I wondered if perhaps this turned him on or if he liked the changes in me. I did become more sexual. In retrospect, I was almost frigid, and that must have been hard for Rob to come to terms with. I had a terrible thought that he didn't love me enough to care, or that he was looking for a way to leave our marriage. I cried when I told Steve that Rob knew about us. He was worried, asking exactly how the conversation went, but was able to reassure me by assuring me that I had not lost Rob and that he would talk to him. Rob. I was surprised when Steve showed up at the pub at the usual time for our regular meeting, although he looked like a ghost and very confused. He sat down heavily on a chair, handing me a mug of beer. I'm so sorry, mate. I just couldn't resist her. I will gladly accept punishment from you if it makes you feel better, but no matter what happens, don't leave her. She will be killed if she loses you. She's been in tears all day in the office. Why is she crying? She did it all. It was my fault. Don't blame Helen. I started it all. Wine didn't help us make good decisions. It won't happen again. I don't know if it makes everything worse or better, but I really care. It wasn't just sex. It felt somehow right and special when we were together, and so terrible after, when we thought about you. It was just one time. Helen felt so guilty afterwards, and I wasn't far behind her. I see, to be honest, I imagined you both had been doing this for 2 days. No, it wasn't like that at all. If this is all just for you to satisfy your lust, then it needs to end now. But if you really care, then let it run its course. Steve looked absolutely stunned. Wait, what? Of all the answers I expected, this was not the one. Are you really okay with this? Wait, why don't you lose your temper? Are you sure you're okay? Yes, if she needs it, then I can live with it. But be wise, if you start rubbing it in front of my nose, you'll regret it. And you must treat her well, take good care of her. After that, we developed a strange relationship dynamic. We were still friends. Steve was often there when we got together with family and friends. I didn't ask, but I knew they had sex. She didn't have to hide the fact that she smiled more often and was in a better mood. They didn't go on dates, but they did go on business trips once a month or so. Helen didn't elaborate much, but when asked, she didn't deny anything. We still slept together and had sex more often than in our previous married life. I couldn't figure out if she was just opening up or if it was compensation. Either way, she was a passionate partner and didn't hold back. Helen, my work life was completely separate from my home life. Home life remained intact, and I wanted to keep it that way. Working life has changed dramatically. Steve encouraged me to try different things and not be afraid to make mistakes. This approach seemed to extend to our sex life, and I was definitely taking risks with it. Sex in the office has become a regular occurrence with a lot of variety. Sometimes it was just looks and touches, sometimes kisses, but often more. Steve took photos and videos of me in the office, usually clothed, but sometimes when I showed stockings and lingerie, I really enjoyed it, teasing him and striking poses. I loved the way he reacted and how much it turned him on. One day I was taking notes in front of his desk while Steve walked around the room searching for the right words. Without a word, he unbuttoned his trousers. I gave him pleasure. Throughout all of this, I tried to spend more time with Rob, both socially and sexually. I wasn't sure what was going on in his head, but I felt like in some way my newfound sexuality helped us connect on a deeper level. Despite my actions, I was sure that I loved him more than ever and was willing to do whatever he asked, even if it meant ending my relationship with Steve. A few weeks into our relationship, Steve suggested I watch a movie called Secretary. A few days later, when I confirmed that I had looked at it, he pointed to the letter on his desk. You made a mistake in this letter. Is it true? Sorry, I'll fix it and send it again. No need, bend over the table. I slowly and hesitantly leaned over the table. Now arch your back and stick out that beautiful ass. I leaned even lower, arching my back so that my buttocks slowly rose up. The next moment, I felt a sharp blow. Steve slapped me hard on the ass. Then he hit the left buttock again, then the right, and finally the center, making a loud slap, and I screamed in pain. The next day, I followed his instructions and enjoyed a thorough retaliatory spanking followed by gentle lovemaking. The anticipation were unbearably erotic. I had dressed specifically to be spanked and was really looking forward to it. I felt guilty when I noticed Rob eyeing my leather skirt suspiciously when I got home from work. I wondered if I had turned into an insatiable nymphomaniac. I just couldn't imagine letting Rob spank me. It wasn't part of our loving relationship. When Rob was away on business, I invited Steve to spend a week with me. I decided to use the guest room rather than the marital bed, which seemed a bit messy. We lived like a married couple until Rob unexpectedly returned on Thursday evening. When he walked into the living room, I was still cuddled up against Steve, wearing the sheer negligee Rob had bought me for our 20th anniversary. I felt terrible realizing that it seemed like I had replaced Rob. Rob didn't say a word, but he looked incredibly upset. He burst into the kitchen, and I heard the refrigerator door opening, the sound of a bottle being opened, and the back door. We jumped up. Steve knew we were in trouble. He quickly got dressed and left, giving me an apologetic look. I put on a more decent robe and went to look for Rob, sat down next to him on the veranda. Steve left. He wanted to apologize for you catching us like that. He looked at me. So Steve gets the negligee and I get the robe. Don't be surprised. I knew you were sleeping with him. This is your house after all, and it was. Inappropriate, I'm sorry. Your mom saw you kiss him goodbye at the party. I tried to explain that you were just friends, but I don't think she believed it. Damn, I'm so sorry. I'll talk to her and explain everything. Who else knows? Nobody. Well, I told Julie, she's my best friend, and she figured out that something was going on. Great, I can assume that her husband knows, and maybe others do. Julie is rarely reserved. She promised not to tell anyone and... Rob interrupted me. Yaudo, you understand that we haven't made love for 3 weeks. It can't be that long. We were together just recently, I'm sure. How many times have you had sex with Steve during this time? A few. Well, probably a lot, I'm sorry. You weren't feeling well. He seems to be getting the best of you. Has he already told you he loves you? I looked down, not knowing what to say. And what did you answer him? I can't help but have feelings for him, but I love you more than anything. He helped me so much. I think you've seen it. With him, I can be more open and try things that I can't do with you. I see, you know what hurt me the most. Seeing you, my wife, pressed against him, looking pleased. I never expected this from you, to be replaced in my own home. I would prefer to be left alone if you don't mind. Please talk to me, you weren't replaced. Not at all, you weren't around so it seemed normal, but I know it was a stupid mistake. I can't lose you, Rob, when I remember you saved me from a miserable life and gave me a wonderful one. Marrying you was the best decision of my life. Rob just looked at me with an expression of disgust and disappointment. Okay, if you need it, I'll leave you alone for a while. I'm sorry for ruining everything. I want to atone for my guilt and sort everything out. I'll wait until you're ready to talk. We didn't talk anymore and slept separately. He stayed in bed while I got ready for work. I spoke to Steve as soon as I got to the office. He was also alarmed by Rob's reaction. We went from the euphoria of being together to the realization that Rob was clearly desperate. I don't understand. He encouraged it all and knew what was going on. I think we went too far. I didn't even realize it, but we haven't made love in 3 weeks and I almost told him we were in love. Damn, no wonder he's mad. He's my best friend. This whole thing was supposed to be some kind of adventure for the 3 of us, not excluding him. I burst into tears. I couldn't do anything worse for him. You are his best friend. We betrayed him, and I admitted that I love you. What did we do to him? I apologized and emphasized how much I still loved him, but he didn't seem to hear me at all. I'm very worried that it's completely my fault. I got so carried away with us and completely forgot about him. I'll come home with you after work today and suggest you step back. Maybe we need some time apart to come to some kind of compromise with Rob. When we returned home, Rob was gone. Moreover, his things were gone, and there was a pile of papers left on the kitchen table. I wasn't sure what it all meant, but he signed the deeds for the house, putting it in my name, and also transferred all the bills and insurance policies to me. I was in a panic and called all his friends and family. The only one who had seen him recently was his mother, Jean. It turned out that he was not on a business trip at all, but stayed with his mother for several days. She worried about him, and he spent a lot of time reminiscing and saying how much he loved her and how lucky he was to have such wonderful parents despite losing his father at an early age. He swore to her that he was fine and said that he was going to go on a trip, but did not say where. It wasn't until I burst into tears while talking to his boss, Simon, that I finally got some information. He admitted that Rob no longer worked for them. He retired due to health reasons. He left quietly, without any fuss, except for a couple of beers with close colleagues after work. He has not communicated with anyone since then. I felt horrified that I had made a terrible mistake and was very worried about Rob. I searched all over the house for clues, other family members, and Steve also tried to find him. Eventually, I found a letter inviting me for a CT scan, but the hospital refused to provide any information due to patient confidentiality. I remembered how tired he had looked lately. I thought it was work and stress, perhaps stress that I caused. Weeks passed, and I became depressed. I hurt Rob, and the thought of him being alone was excruciating. I don't know how, but a few months later, Steve managed to find out that Rob was in a private nursing home, and I immediately went there. I couldn't stop shaking on the way, and when I realized that the facility was like a hospice, my condition worsened. They didn't let me in until Rob agreed to meet me. I was taken to a separate building in a large area. He sat in a wheelchair in the garden and looked terrible, so thin and weak. "Why are you here, Helen?" "Because I love you and I'm afraid of what's happening to you." "It's not that complicated. I'm dying. It's stage 4 prostate cancer." At first, these words didn't reach me. I just couldn't believe it. There must be something that can be done. They suggested chemotherapy and radiotherapy, but they won't fix anything. They will only prolong the time a little. Well, at least this is something. When do they start? They won't start. I saw my dad go through it. He was so sick, and it didn't change much. I'd rather go out on my own terms. Well, Rob, you know the treatment is better today. Perhaps, but it seems like the time has come. We were silent for several minutes, which seemed like hours, while I realized what I had heard. Why did you leave? I needed to find a peaceful place. Our home was no longer that. The realization that I had deprived him of his peace and home fell on me like a huge burden. But I would take care of you. I'm not sure I wanted it, but certainly not after Steve was there. When this all started, I thought I was helping you move on after I left. I imagined you would be left alone, and I didn't want that for you. It all started well. You looked amazing. You were more confident. You could be courted after I left, and maybe Steve would be the one. You two always got along so well. I never thought I'd lose you before I died. I only want you, Rob. That's not an option right now. Have you seen him recently? Not in that sense, since you found us together, but he was the one who found you. He is killed by what happened. I know he wants to come and see you, but he's afraid. I'm hardly in a position to cause him any harm. He's clearly in love with you. I love him in my own way, but I'm in love with you. I thought you were good with it. You didn't show it. You gave him more than you gave me, and you spent more time with him than with me. I didn't mean to hurt you. Be honest with yourself, Helen. You forgot about me pretty quickly once you started with Steve. It was something new, a hobby. I made a mistake, and I'm so sorry. I want to be with you, take care of you, your mother too. She's incredibly worried about you. The mention of his mom seemed to excite him and change his attitude. You can tell her where I am. There's not much time left. I'd like to see her. Please let me take care of you, in sickness and in health, remember? I love you so much, I'm lost without you. I love it here, and it has everything I need. I've donated a lot to the hospice so they can start building these individual family units, with the understanding that I will be their first client. Don't worry, there is a lot of money left from the disability payment, and the insurance will pay. I left you all the papers. I don't care about money. How could you hide this from me? At first, I just wanted to get everything in order. I was so focused on how you would cope after I left. Once you started dating Steve for real, I couldn't just tell you I was dying. I didn't want you to feel sorry. That would be love, not regret, idiot. I can't believe you encouraged me to do this when you were going through it all alone. I know I made a lot of mistakes too. I'm not sure if I was thinking clearly then or now. My head has been confused lately. Rob didn't come home, but I visited him every day, usually with his mom. His complaints about my presence diminished every day. We helped look after him and were even allowed to stay in his unit. Finally, Steve found the courage to come and see Rob. He came with a box of beer. After the first apology and Rob calming down, I left them alone. None of them told me exactly what they were talking about, and I didn't want to dredge up the past. I asked Rob if he had forgiven Steve and, hopefully, me as well. He responded that life is too short to hold grudges, laughing, adding that his life is definitely like that. He laughed, but I was devastated and had never felt so unworthy before. Rob's mother, Jean, remained stoic and determined and a constant source of comfort. She explained to him that he is not a burden to us. Help is not only for him, but for her, and for me too. She had already been through this with his father. Caring for him was a gift that she and I would gladly accept. Rob asked her about what it was like to be alone after his father died. This is what led him to accept Steve's offer. She insisted she was happy, living life to the fullest with friends and family. She also believed that it would not be fair to marry another man when she was still and always will be in love with Rob's father. It reminded me painfully of the love I had missed. Another 3 months later, Rob passed away peacefully. In his last words, he said that he forgives me for everything and encouraged me to find someone and move on, not to go back into my shell, otherwise it was all in vain. Rob left me a lot of property and money, but none of it mattered. I had to understand that something was wrong. It would not be possible for him to calmly accept everything that we did. I didn't see it because I was so focused on myself. Rob knew me so well. I would have closed myself off again when I lost him. But his decision was devastating, the realization that I had failed him. I prided myself on being a good person and lost that belief in myself. No amount of confidence could undo that kind of damage. Steve came to the funeral. We spoke briefly, confirming that we were both feeling just as bad. He gave me paid leave so I could spend all my time with Rob, and I reaffirmed my intention to never return to work. Another 6 months passed before Steve came to see me again, still in the house I shared with Rob. I was shocked to see him. "This is a bad idea, Steve. I don't want to remember all this." He raised his hands. "I'll leave if you want, but you have to know that it wasn't my idea, it was Rob's idea." This quickly caught my attention. "What? How?" "That time when I came to him, he asked if I loved you, and I confessed. He said you have feelings for me, but you probably need time. He didn't think we would have gotten so close if we didn't love each other. We can't. It's not right. Right or wrong, I really love you, Helen, always have." Despite Rob's views and Steve's declaration of love, for a long time I could not cope with what we had done with Rob. We saw each other several times, but only as friends. It was Jean who changed my attitude by telling me that I was too young not to move on, to live life to the fullest, something that Rob had been denied, but that he wanted for me. She went so far as to say that she would not speak to me again if I refused to carry out her son's last wishes. I burst into tears and cried on her shoulder, saying that Rob was so brave and selfless, thinking about me and not about himself, when I was the complete opposite. Jean held me and reassured me, "We all make mistakes, don't let them ruin your life. You made up for Rob and took care of him for months. I know he felt and appreciated all your love in the end, and he wasn't blameless about it either." Steve slowly came back into my life. It wasn't the same as with Rob, but it was close. I always felt that Rob was still present with us, and that was a comforting feeling. When Steve was at work, I often talked to Rob as if he were still there. We lived together for the rest of our lives, but I was never able to get married again. I still felt like Rob's wife and believed that it was just a matter of time before we saw each other again. We saw each other again. We saw each other